So let's move on to our last Caterham race of the weekend, and it's the non-championship end of season Caterham Autumn Trophy for the Academy. So, Chris, in the assembly area, down to you.
Welcome back to a now sunny Snetterton. We've had both ends of the weather spectrum throughout the weekend, and it is now time for the Caterham Academy cars to come out again. The Love Cars Caterham Academy Autumn Trophy. It's a non-championship event decided by the second fastest laps by every competitor from both the white and green groups, top of which is Mr. Jiddix. We meet again, Freddie.
Yeah, we do. Not quite the result we wanted this morning, so we've got another race to try and make it better.
Absolutely. So, proving that, so you're representing the green group. Do you feel that you're kind of, top of the tree, king of the crop?
We'll find out in a minute.
Good man. So, even though it's a non-championship event, would it be fair to say that the right foot's still quite as heavy as it normally is?
Yeah, even more so.
Good man. Best of luck, Freddie. Hopefully, enjoy the race. I love this the pink patchwork. It's almost like a cartoon plasterwork going on the number 66. Number 33, also from green, is Jeff Newman. Well, familiar faces and some new names for you to pit your mighty machine against.
I don't know about mighty, but yeah, I'm looking forward to mingling with White Group. Haven't played with them before, so let's just go out and have some lovely fun.
Now, we were talking before we came on air that the green group has typically been that little bit quicker, but you got the likes of Harry George, who was a championship contender for the white groups. Looking forward to it, cautious, what's the thought?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a nice even race with Harry, so let's see how we get on.
Best of luck, good sir. As you can hear, the gate is open, the cars are heading on track. Harry George is top of the white group for the Caterham Academies. We'll see how they get on. Throwing back now to Scott Woodward in the commentary box.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yes, for one last time in 2021, the Caterham Academy cars take to the grid, but not for any championships because they've both been settled. This is the special non-championship end of season Caterham Academy Autumn Trophy race, where both drivers from both academy groups get the first proper chance to race against each other on the same grid for the same prize, which is quite simply the race-winning trophy. Chris Hutchinson still in the commentary box with me here, of course. This is always a special time for academy drivers. They're completing their championships. This literally is just it's essentially a case. It's like it's like a mini end-of-season party for them. They can let their hair down, have some fun. It's purely just a race for bragging rights and a trophy to manage to do one last time. And it's essentially like what I call the graduation race. They've won their championships. Now to say one last time goodbye to academy, one last time in these specification cars before they all move up to road sport. It's always a special race, isn't it?
I think you said the word bragging rights there, and I think that's probably more to the point. They certainly, everyone wants to get as much racing as they can done. We haven't got all the cars out here for this. It is it's an optional race. You don't have to take part. It's not part of the championship. But certainly this is the first time we get to see the white group and the green group come and join together into one grid. So you can see we've got a nice strong number of cars here. We've got Freddie Jiddix and Jeff Newman. So we saw them having their championship battle going absolutely dramatic down to the line, and so I'm sure Jiddix will be looking to for a bit of redemption there. But equally, we've got other white group cars all in the mix as well, including Harry George, who we also saw in that sort of championship battle earlier on. We haven't got Charlie Lower, and he's heading off a bit early today, so he hasn't been able to take on this race. But yes, it's exciting for us watching, as well as I'm sure those drivers, to get a racing and maybe a flavour for that road sport feel which we're going to get next year. And of course, you've been this whole route before, so this is one of the things that you've experienced before in your past. What do you remember your course and trophy race, whether it was good or bad? It kind of it's that kind of whole thing in terms of, I've done my championship now, this is a proper chance to just enjoy myself with the friends I've made, just a casual race, nothing else on mind apart from simply just going for it and getting the bragging rights of being the fastest academy driver. Scott, it absolutely matters. You want to go and win it. You absolutely want to go and give a good performance, and it really does think about road sport. But I think I ended up coming fourth. It was really mixed conditions for our autumn trophy race, so it was really tricky under wheels there. But it was, I remember it was a distant fourth, so it was actually quite an empty race. But in our day, again talking in the older days, we used to have 15-minute academy races, and the autumn trophy was actually a 20-minute race, so it's our first chance to get a feel for that 20 minutes. But as the package develops and as the drivers sort of feedback on what they want out of this initial racing season they do with the academy, Caterham have sort of extended that to be a 20-minute race for them all through the season. And in fact, this year, today, they've actually got 3 races this season, and we're the only other, the Caterham 7 UK Championship, the only ones that gets 3 races in a race weekend. So they've got plenty of racing going on. Great
stuff, and this should be an amazing way for them to essentially, in a wonderful way, wave goodbye to their years in Caterham Academy. So I think because you had the grid put together quite late, because of course it was being put together by, we believe, either second fastest times in qualifying or possibly fastest lap times in the race. Either way, we can give you the grid, at least we can read it to you verbally, because we don't have the grid graphic for it because it's been come to us too late. But we'll give you the grid and have it lined up. Remember, this is based on either fastest lap times that were from the fastest laps throughout their races that they've had today, or their second fastest times in qualifying combined together. So, from the top, this is how the final 2021 Academy race of the season, the Autumn Trophy, lines up with both white and green group cars together on the grid. And it lines up as follows. Freddie Chiddix and Jeff Newman on the front row of the grid together, where we've seen that before. Both the green group contenders on the front row, Chiddix on pole, Newman alongside him. Then it's Harry George, who was one of the main championship contenders in the white group. He starts third alongside Gareth Lucas on the front on the second row of the grid. Mark Jones and Theo Theata then come next on row 3, followed by Chris Fraser and Mark Kendall, then Robert Domain and Giles Perry to round out the top 10. It's then Neil Perry and Ian Harris, Benja Headley and Mike Banton. Rocco Ainscoe and Louis Deason make up the 8th row of the grid, from Augustin Seyrac, Lyndon Arnold, then Ray Radford and Chris Roberts who round out the top 20. Then it's Richard Percy, Ian Summers, Ida Lowe, John Vincent and Ian Bettis who round out the 25 car grid for this final race of the year for Caterham Academy. It's almost a bit of a sombre mood in terms of saying, they're saying goodbye to their Academy year, but of course at the same time it's excitement. It's also, for some people, probably a bit of relief because it's been quite a long season, but for these guys, this has been the last final little, hopefully, sweet little memory to kind of just take away from 2021 before they then choose to move up to arguably anywhere they want, which is either road sport, or some have even gone as far as going straight into 270 or even 310Rs if they really wanted to. So for them it's really a case of just to enjoy one last time in the car on the specification before they then decide to either move on or to go to another step or to do anything else in their racing career. It's one nice little way to kind of wrap everything up after a great year.
And if ever anyone's watching, sat on their sofa at home thinking, how do I get involved? Well, head over to the Caterham Motorsport website or Caterham Cars website, and you can find all details about how you can go and buy your own Academy car. Comes with a full package of racing. You've seen everything that we've sort of been on offer today. So you buy the car, but you get the race package as part of that.
Yeah, I think it's just about a five shy of 30 grand, I think, for the whole package this time by, and you get essentially, as you say, everything in the race car, all your race entries, everything else, and to enter it, you have to be a complete novice driver, so you can't have ever held any kind of racing or competition license ever, and then you go through, you get the entire Caterham Academy gets split off into their 2 groups, but then all together in each of their groups do a handling day, a test day, setup days, track days to get used to the car and racing it. Then they'll do the competitive sprint to start the season where there are championship points available towards their main total, and then they'll go ahead and do their races all towards the end of the season. So everyone lined up for one last time in the Caterham Academy. Time to throw the hats into the air and graduate in style. The special Caterham Academy Autumn Trophy race, all set to get underway here. It is Chiddix and Newman, just as it was earlier on for the green group title. Who's going to win the sprint down towards turn 1 for the final time in Caterham Academy for 2021? Well, it's a good start for Newman from the pole position time as they charge away from the first time. Now, some of these drivers won't have raced against each other at all, ever, in the season at all. So it's going to be quite tentative to feed each other out into turn 1. But it's Newman who leads. It's Chiddix in second place. Jones is there in third place. Benja Headley gets wide on the exit and almost gets tabbed by Mark Kendall. Ian Harris was up there as well, making a good start from the sort of middle of the pack as well. But into the complex for the first time, into the hairpin, and it's Newman who leads, Chiddix second. It's then Mark Jones in third, and on the outside line there was Harry George battling with Gareth Lucas. So looking through my eyes, just about everyone's got through unscathed here, so it's good to see. But our final 20 minutes of racing for the Caterham Academy guys this year all started cleanly. Now pretty much it's just seconds out. Have at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And advantage group green at the moment. So with Chiddix and Newman absolutely taking off where they left off in their championship battle. Newman here up the inside, a little bit of locking up there from other drivers. You do get to learn your competitors and your fellow drivers that sort of around you on track at the time. So you're right, you don't know what the sort of attitude of the cars are going to be going into this race, where a lot of the people around you're just not going to even recognise their car.
Yeah, so white group drivers will encounter green group drivers competitively in this manner for the first time, and vice versa. These cars have collectively raced on the same track together, but not in the same race together, if that makes sense, because they did also combine onto one grid, so that white and green group drive cars could race within themselves on one grid to get on grid collectively on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Given the length of the circuit, they put all the green and white group cars together, and of course they were racing amongst their own the drivers in their own group for respective points positions in order to make sure they could pick up what they needed. So the group heads its way into Brundle and Nelson for the first time. Chiddick leads, Newman second, then it's Jones, followed by Harry George, Gareth Lucas and Mark Kendall. Kendall tries to squeeze up the outside of Gareth Lucas into the right hand at the bomb hole on the outside line. And there's Isla Lowe having a scrap there with Ian Bettis. That's over position towards the back of the field. So they're having a good scrap of their own. Down towards the bomb hole. Now it's Chiddick who now leads us. Chiddick has taken over the lead. So he managed to make the move. It must have been down the back straight, because of course we saw for a while there it was Newman who was in the front, but Chiddick managed to work his way around. And for losing out on the championship, I think there's only one thing on Freddie Chiddick's mind: that's going to be revenge. He missed out on the championship. He wants to take the bragging rights into next year and take the victory in the Awesome Trophy to go into Road Sport for 2022, saying, well, I won my last race of the year. So let's see what you got, Jeff.
He lost the championship by a lap, a lap of 2:10 slightly slower, didn't he? So yes, absolutely, he'd be looking to put that back, put that right. But they're absolutely going at it. We've got Harry George there. He's not got Charlie Lower in this actual race, so he's not got the person there, but he's moved himself back into third place, as we've got Jones there just losing out a place going into the hairpin. But yeah, so absolutely brilliant. So we got two classes showing up on our side screen there. I don't think that's relevant at the
Well, that's interesting, because there aren't actually classes shown, but it still shows position in class, first, second and third. So they have removed the classes, but we can give us a reminder of which group, because we know which drivers in which group. We can essentially give us a bit of a small insight and cheekily saying essentially which group is technically performing better in this race than the collective. And so far, at the moment, in fact, there we go on the left hand side, that's the collective run, but you can't see the positions first, second, third in class, etc. We can on our timing screen. So at the moment, it is a green group 1, 2, 3 in inverted commas. The next one in fourth place is the top white group car, which is Harry George. But I'm certain if Charlie Lower was in here, he'd have his elbows out in his front pack as well.
Yeah, and you can bet your bottom dollar that they're trying to shuffle those orders as we go. But Chiddick's there, sort of giving himself a little bit of a gap. But we've got Harry George there looking menacing in third place, looking like he wants to make sure that Group I honours are also represented here.
There goes Neil Perry, car number 50. He's on the back of Giles Perry. So the two Perry drivers so you almost say it's kind of, I was going to make the joke of Perry because it's obviously 11th, 12th place, but I'll just concentrate on the race now. Anyway, first down to fifth is going to be Chiddick, Newman, Jones, George and Kendall. But Kendall's now been overhauled by Mark. Well, Jones is there, Kendall's right behind. So the two green cars getting into the mix. Further back, some more battles going on. And again, drivers just feeling out the new ones, thinking, oh, I haven't raced against you before. How are you under brakes? Or how are you when you turn in? Are you going to see me when I turn in? So again, there's more learning going in here, because they're racing against drivers who they haven't come across. Someone else went across the grass up at Brundle and Nelson, cutting the S's section. So this is very much, it almost feels a little bit like in some cases going back to their first ever race, because they're kind of going against drivers they've never actually raced against before. So now they're kind of up against someone who they're not sure about and going, how's he going to react when I turn in? How's he going to react when I go for a move? How's he going to react when I go later on the brakes? They've got to try and find that out on the fly here in these next sort of 15-20 minutes for drivers that they haven't ever come across before on track.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, some drivers do tend to turn across to the front of your car a bit more viciously than others, and you certainly learn which ones are like kicking mules. But as we got sort of everything's closing up, Harry George there set the fastest lap on that last lap round. So he, even though he's in third place, he did close that gap down entirely. So it's all closed up at the front again, with Chiddick still out in front going over the line, with Newman following behind, but George looking like he's got a bit of momentum going on.
Certainly he does. Fastest lap of the race for Harry George, 2 minutes 17.062. So he's now worked his way into third place, and he's now on the back of Jeff Newman. Jeff looks across and says, oh, hello, who are you? I've never come across you before. So up to down the outside line, doesn't expect to see Harry George around there. So these two now are going to go into combat whilst Freddie Chiddick holds on to the leads. They come out of the final corner. Mark Jones is having a strong race so far in the early stage. He's up to fourth, so fourth place for him, and third out of the green group drivers. Now down towards Argy's they go, and Harry George goes on the attack. He looks that wider line, tries to focus, and background contact between two cars. Gareth Lucas is one of them, Mark Kendall's the other, and they were battling over 5th and 6th positions. So I think both of them didn't want to give up went for the same piece of tarmac into Hamilton, didn't want to give up, and that's been the end result.
We said earlier on, Hamilton's not really the place to do that. There's also a tyre barrier and all sorts. It looks like there's a bit of steam coming out of Kendall's car, so I hope he actually comes to a stop, because you don't want to lose all your coolant and then carry on driving. That's not a good way to end your race. The battle coming down here through Brundle and Senna. So Chiddick's still out there, Newman still resisting the pressure behind from George, but George and Jones, they're absolutely putting that pressure on Newman, and he's got more to think about than the battle just in front of him now. He's got to actually look in his mirrors constantly as well.
So it's headed through the complex for the leaders coming out of Brundle and Nelson. Looking back further back, another battle we've got going on here. This is between, catch clips of the numbers, there was number 19 was in there. That looks like it was Chris Roberts. I think with John Vincent not too far behind him. Lyndon Arlen was around that battle too. So we've got a definitive top 4 now. Chiddick, Newman, George and Jones as they come now onto the pit straight again. This is to complete lap 3. Any new fastest laps of the race? None from anyone there. The best lap out of the 4 was Mark Jones with a 2:17.275. He was about 2/10 quicker on that lap as they come through the right-hander. Foot to the floor. Ooh, clip of the inside curve there. A little bit out of shape for Mark Jones, but he got enough momentum to swing himself into the mix here. It's always 3 abreast. He shoots the gap between George and Newman into the hairpin. Does make it into 3rd place. That was pretty bold stuff. Mark Jones, so he clipped the curb on the inside, carried the speed through the corner, and then managed to shoot up the inside and saw a gap and thought, that'll work. I'll go through that.
Those gaps don't always maintain, but really good racing to see them all going 3 abreast into the hairpin there. Like the more experienced championships, all made that work on the opening laps, and they're showing that they can do that through these fields as well. So yeah, really tasty propositions for this race, but also next year.
Again, this gives us small glimpses of what we might see in next year's Motorsport Championship, and already I'm liking the signs at the moment, particularly with the front 4 guys. So already Chiddick, Jones, George, and Chiddick, Newman, George, and Jones at the front, with Chiddick holding on to the lead at this point in time. And Chiddick really has been a brilliant driver. Of course, we know he's got some decent esports talents, given the fact that he's also competed in the CaterhamRacer.com e-series as well, and actually done a few bits and pieces. There's quite a few handy drivers in that, if we do say so ourselves. And Treddy's one of them. He has had some decent results, so it translates that he can do it just on the real racetrack just as much as he can in the sim. And
in the virtual world, you're racing against people with far more racecraft and experience, so the fact that he's able to hold his own in that situation shows how the front of the academy group, whilst they're still learning at this stage of the year, they've actually, they've learned a lot of their racecraft already, and the front is, you wouldn't just be able to jump in and, even as an experienced racer and actually pull away from these guys. They are maximising that car, and it's really good to see that Chiddick is able to do that in the virtual world, but proves that out in the virtual world and in the real world, there's sort of good skills there.
We always said those races were good practice for the real events, weren't they? So it's like Freddie Chiddick was taking that to heart, I think. So Chiddick's case in point, pulling away by a couple of seconds now, as we see Jeff Newman's getting a bit too enticed by the fact that Mark Jones and Harry George are giving quite a lot of company here, as he's now starting to lose touch with Freddie Chiddick on this lap. The last lap time by, it was not 0.2 of a second was the gap. It's now about 2 seconds as they come across the line. Here comes Mark Jones to the outside to try and make the move on Newman. This is for 2nd place. Already come up to a third, that's halfway through the race already now. 10.5 minutes to go. Through the right-hander. Harry George is sweeping this way, and that he looked for the move and saw Jeff Newman just throw the block immediately to the inside line. So he thinks, right, if you're going to make it difficult, I'm going around the outside, pal. Let's try this. As I look for the switchback, no quite real way to get through there, it looked like, for the time being.
They've also got the late afternoon sun to contend with at the moment, and it was certainly an issue for some of the drivers yesterday. Coming up the main straight, you're heading straight into that sun, and you can see they're not all wearing tinted visors, so you'll certainly be squinting a little bit to make sure you can still see your braking markers and the other cars around you. Be
on the shopping list for next year, won't it? Tinted visors, to make sure they remember that for the road sport season, if they find themselves racing this late in the season, or if they're this late in the day on a summer's afternoon. Freddie Chiddick, meanwhile, is driving like it is one, because he's absolutely charging away in this Awesome Trophy race. It's now leaving Jones, Newman and George to battle over 2nd place. Here comes George down the outside for 3rd, but Newman again holds that outside, but you can pass around the outside, and it has been done before. Better traction on the outside for George. He goes side by side. He'll go on the outside line for Williams this time, but Newman holds firm, just toes the white line on the inside of the right-hander. Now they're going to head down the straight, and with better momentum, there might be a chance Harry might get through until Newman got the tow from the car in front, and now George has to slot in and get a tow of his own to make sure that Newman doesn't get away from him.
It's a very rare thing to see overtaking around that last corner, because most of the time you're just waiting for the straight, and actually it's normally the most sensible decision. But Newman there positioning his car very carefully inside that toe, and he knew at that point he could protect from Harry George, who has actually slipped down to 4th place now. So it is a 1-2-3 currently for the green group, and Harry George there holding honours for the white group, and see whether he can get back on that podium again.
So looking at the rest of the group, we've got Chris Fraser's up to 5th position there, Benja Headley 6th, Robert Domain 7th, Giles Perry is 8th, Theo Theatu is having a better time than he had in his academy race earlier on. He's currently in 9th place. Then Neil Perry rounds up the top 10. And a shout out also to Louise Deason. She's up in the P11. It's not too bad for Louise. She can carry on going. She might possibly get herself a top 10. Freddie Chivix, who's spread eagling the field, has also pinched the fastest lap as well, 2 minutes 16.980. Meanwhile, here comes Jeff Newman trying to get around Mark Jones here as they turn through the right hand and clips the grass on the inside line, drifts out a little bit wide, and that's going to allow Newman to get himself alongside. Harry George has got his tail up as well. The three of them head into the hairpin together, and Jones puts his car right on the apex, neatly rotates it right on the curb, and now we've still got Newman and George pressing on. Now they head in through the left-hander, up through Palmer. Still 7 3/4 minutes to go. Still a little bit left in this race, and Chiddix at the moment looks like he's got it under control, but of course it's never always as straightforward as that until they get to the flag. But 2nd, 3rd and 4th looks like this is the main battle to be here, to be on the podium. One of these three has to accept they're not going to be on the rostrum, but which one's it going to be? And trying to pick one out is going to be near impossible.
Yeah, and Harry George there, he was breaking it down the inside in a gap that didn't look like it was ever going to be there, but he persisted. He even used a bit of the grass going into Agostini that time, still managed to get the thing stopped, and I'm expecting to see that he would have actually exited that corner ahead. We'll wait to see that next time we look at that front field. But yeah, there's again a lot of I guess you've got to start scenting your territory, haven't you? You've got to start staking your claim and saying, this is me driving here, and we're going to be racing next year in road sport. But I want to win these battles out. They are important to everyone. I know we said this is the end of season feel, that kind of graduation, but equally there's egos there to deal with as well.
Yeah, there's stories going in for next year and scores to settle, isn't there? So this is where they pretty much start in many cases, particularly for those who are racing against academy drivers they haven't raced with over the course of the season quite regularly. There's a big lock-up between those two there, as Newman just about held on from Harry George, but Harry was just trying to get round the outside, and Newman just held off as long as he needed to prevent any kind of an attack.
Great race awareness there by Newman to put his car in exactly where he wanted to, make it really uncomfortable for George going up the inside there. And like you say, just George grabbed a wheel, and that obviously just scuppered any chance he was going to make it up the outside.
That was the 3rd group of cars we look at. Theo Theatu really has pulled away from this 2nd group. That is trying to work out the group of cars. No, that is the 2nd group of cars, because this is now Robert Domain who's worked his way up into 6th position. He's now ahead of Chris Fraser, and also in there too now is Giles Perry and Benja Headley. So this is now a scrap between these four. Black and white flag has gone out to car 99, which is Benja Headley. So he's been given a black and white flag for track limits. That's a warning for him. So if he does it again, he will get himself a 5-second time penalty. He's probably so focused on the battle he's having right at the moment with Giles Perry to possibly wonder how he might be able to get out of that one. Side-by-side ender brakes for Domain and for Chris Fraser. Also in there too now is the 50 car of Neil Perry. And Headley, though, looks like he possibly missed a shift or didn't quite get the momentum off the corner that he wanted, because Giles Perry managed to pick himself round the outside, and now Neil Perry is going to get a chance to move through if he can.
This is a pocket of white championship races all absolutely going at it again, so they didn't have enough fun this morning, so they decided they'd have it all again this afternoon. Perfectly dry conditions now, of course. They had to, both the academy racers had to squirm around the track, didn't they, a bit earlier on today, but this is actually perfectly good conditions for them now, and the full track available for all of their manoeuvres, and they're continuing their battle exactly as they left off this morning.
Yes, it's a proper, looking down what we've got in there, because we've got, as we say, Domain, Fraser, Perry, Headley and Perry. There is a little bit of a mix of both green and white in there. I see what you mean. There is some white group cars in there, but there's also a couple of green group in there at the head of it, kind of mixing amongst them. So good to see another inter-academy group battle here between these 4 or 5 drivers. Speaking of battles, now this is interesting. So Jeff Newman's been shuffled to 4th now. Harry George is now 2nd he's moved up to. Little twitch of oversteer over the curb. Oversteer ran a bit too wide. He's up to 2nd. Mark Jones is now 3rd as he clips the curb right on the apex. the way these cars are picked on this circuit, the way they move around, they sit and they squat and they move around. It's brilliant to watch the suspension at work when they lean through these long corners and then start to nosedive a bit right under brakes and turn their way through. So now it's a chance for Newman to try and put himself back in contention to get a podium place. He'll be in the slipstream. Still less than 4 minutes to go. Freddie Chiddick, meanwhile, hasn't got a care in the world. He's just charging away. The gap now is 4.2 seconds. Harry George sets the fastest lap of the race, although he's just lost out to second place. And Mark Jones, a bit cheeky there, just tried to bang wheels with him there as he went down into turn 1. Mark got a little bit too hot, so that's Harry George's revenge. He now pulls level with Mark on the run down towards the hairpin. Here comes Jeff Newman. He tries to gut the inside of both of them. Has his wheel just alongside Mark Jones. He's still done it quite several times before this year in the green group, but they've both been passed by the white group man. So up into second place goes Harry George. A little further back, this is Louise Decent. She's having a scrap with the
Summers, I think.
Yeah, the 44 of Summers. I think Ian Summers. So that's now a battle over 12th, 13th and 14th place, I think, because Linton Knowles not too far ahead of them either. So, yeah, lots of battles in between everywhere at in the pack in this race.
You mentioned sort of, you can see the dynamics of the Academy car, can't you? Because it's a little bit more supple. We don't have the rear anti-roll bar, and the car does move and squat, and you can really see that. And in fact, the whole point of it is being a supple race car. The drivers as well can feel that movement and lean and momentum that they really need to sort of get to grips with. As we go up through the road sport and then through to the 270 and 310, the car gets progressively stiffer and more race-like, which actually means that you feel less of those dynamics. Although in a Caterham, it's still very much present up until you get to the 7 UK Championship car, which is absolutely stiff as a board, and the slick tyres really demand that the car is that stiff. But in the Academy, you see that left rear wheel there really getting compressed and squashed as they push on around. Freddie Chiddick's showing there the car leaning as he's going around, and it's really nice that they can take the curbs and see all the suspension reaction to it as well.
It's almost hypnotic watching them kind of bounce over and move around. Particularly, that's one also a great shot that we've had this weekend. Watching the cars come up pretty close into the bum hole and watching them go through, like watching the cars in the driveway. You can see the rear of the cars. It sits and it moves around. It's a brilliant shot that we've got this weekend to watch them all go through. Not just the Caterhams, but everything else that has been racing here this weekend. To watch the dynamics of the car as it compresses through quite a unique corner in British motorsport. Thankfully untouched by all the mixtures. Now then, there's been a black and white flag out to Ian Summers, I think, for track limits. Also, there's 2 boards going out. The other board is for the more crucial one for Freddie Chiddick. It's the last lap board. He's got one more time around and one more lap as an Academy driver, because of course for all these drivers now, of course, when they finish, they'll be moving on to road sports or higher up, depending where they choose. This great battle continues to go on. Robert Domain now has Chris Racer with outside. Oh, Isla Lowe's off the road. That's having a spin on the exit of, oh dear,
Williams. It looks like
Williams, and I think she's damaged something on the front of the car, because that was 2 different angles that those wheels were turning when she was turning right. So that she's given it a bit of a clout and damaged the suspension. Yeah, that's unfortunate. She's off the road. Looks like the left front had to take a bit of a whack on that one. But now back to our scrap for second, third, and fourth. So Harry George looks like he's got second place relatively in the bag. This is the fight for third going on between Mark Jones and Jeff Newman, who have been 2 of the drivers in green group that they've been going at it all season towards the front. Now it's Mark Jones' turn to get one over on Jeff Newman, but Jeff can get a little bit sort of he can get his elbows out when he needs to try and make a move. So coming up through Hamilton, he's got half a lap to go here.
He's going to have a yellow flag immediately as he comes out onto the Bentley straight, but by the end I imagine that he will there'll be green flags back halfway down the straight, so he will be in a position that he can make that overtake. Harry George hangs his tail out there around Williams in a great way. I've seen George also get the fastest lap, I believe, 16.355, so taking those honours for white group.
Down the back straight, of course no overtaking done the first part of the Bentley straight, because of course they're the yellow flag because of Isla Lowe's car that's parked up there. But for this man, Freddie Chiddick, well, he might have missed out on the Academy title, but he fought valiantly until the end. It looks like he's going to go and take a bit of a consolation prize. Oh dear, well, that's contact there between Mark Jones and Jeff Newman. Now then, of course, one might blame the other, saying, well, Jeff might say you didn't leave me enough room. Mark might say there was no way a move that was on there in that complex, but we'll leave that for the clerk of the course and the stewards. Meanwhile, Freddie Chiddick will head out of the final corner. It's at least something that makes up for missing out for the title. Out of the final corner, he gets to graduate from the Caterham Academy of 2021 in fine style. Freddie Chiddick wins the final Caterham Academy race, the special non-championship autumn trophy. He wins and takes a fantastic memory to go to 2022 as the final Academy winner from the class of 2021. Second for Harry George, fifth for Jeff Newman, and they're still going at it at the final couple of the corners. Spencer Headley's gone wide. There was contact between Fraser and Robert Domain. They're all over the place. You can tell it's end of term, can't you? Because they're all action stations everywhere. Look, Mark Jones finishes third. Mark Jones fourth, Theo Fiato fifth. Then it's Headley, and it was 3 abreast across the line for seventh between Fraser, Domain and Perry, and Fraser got it. Fraser beat Perry. Well, Fraser beat Domain by 25 1/1000 of a second, and then Perry, as in that was Giles Perry, got beaten by a further 10th, 0.126 of a second. So there's even a little bit of a remnants of what happened as Robert Domain's rear win when he crossed the line as well. But yeah, I guess final thought on that one, Chris. I mean, what an Academy year it's been, just regardless of even the COVID challenges at the beginning of the year. To come through, we've had 2 brilliant Academy classes this year. One of the best in the last can't even speak, I'm emotional. Last couple of years that we've had. 2 brilliant Academy classes, green and white, and I'm certain they're going to make an epic Road Sport Championship class next year.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Really good to see all the new drivers there, and the 2 runners-up in the championships there coming first and second in the Autumn Trophy. So that's sort of a little bit of just payback for those 2 there. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. The very dramatic completions to their championship today, and it's been really a pleasure to commentate on those for you today. And we've got all the other championships to conclude in just 2 weeks' time,
including yours, because you'll be in the 7 Championship UK trying to get yourself a strong result. I'm not sure whereabouts are you in the championship.
I think about 6 at the moment, so it might be a chance to get 5th, but it's all tight at the top as ever, Scott.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you ever so much for all your hard work on Caterham. You've been fantastic to give us the insight into what it's like to be racing in Caterham and to give some entertaining thoughts on what's been going on in the race. And again, I know I used to say best of luck for the next couple of weeks, and we'll see how we get on. Let's quickly run through the final results of the Caterham Academy, which is the Autumn Trophy. Freddie Chillicks wins from Harry George and Jeff Newman, with Mark Jones in 4th and Theo Fiato 5th. Then it's Benji Headley, Chris Fraser, Robert Domain, Giles Perry and Neil Perry rounding out the top 10. And then from 11th downwards it's Chris Roberts, Lyndon Arnold, Ian Summers, Ian Bellis, Louise Deason and John Vincent. They're the 16 finishers from Isla Lowe, Gareth Lucas and Mark Kendall. And for that is the end of our Caterham Racing Actions. So those watching on the Caterham stream, thank you for doing so. Hope you've enjoyed all the racing here. Join us in 2 weeks for the season finale of Caterham Motorsport, where we've got Road Sport, 270, 310 and the 7 Championship UK all for their final rounds. Champions will be decided. We'll see you then.